Hey everybody, Eric Switzer for TheGamer here at PAX West, joined by Vincent Adinolfi, the developer of Heartworm. How are you, Vincent?
Good, how are you?
Good, man. I just got to play the game. Can you kind of set up what the premise of the game is?
Yeah, it's a survival horror game. You play as a character named Sam, who is going through the grieving process. She reads on a message board online about a house in the mountains that has some means of contacting the dead. So she goes there, and it doesn't turn out to be exactly what she thought it was going to be. It kind of gets a little surreal from there.
Yeah, very surreal, yeah. So the style is 90s survival horror.
Yep.
So it's very evocative of a certain era of games, but you kind of include very specific iconography. It's the heart rate health monitor from Resident Evil, and the door transitions, and then the camera is sort of a fatal frame kind of thing. Can you talk about those references and the inspirations?
Yeah, so totally Resident Evil, Silent Hill, very obvious ones. I wear it on our sleeve. I'm not trying to hide that from anybody. It's I loved those games, and I wanted to kind of just create something with the framework. Fatal frame kind of incidental. I didn't want to use guns, so I thought a camera was kind of like thematically. The game deals a lot with like memory and stuff like that, and I feel like a camera and analog media all like kind of ties into that. So the camera made sense. Like mechanically, it works like a gun in the game, so it feels like a game in that sense. And obviously, Fatal Frame has done it, so people I think can relate to it. So. Yeah, and then like doors, I love those door transitions. They are optional, you can turn them off. I know some people hate the, but I just love the kind of immersion you feel of like walking through, and like they're all kind of different every time you go through, and yeah, it's just, and the fixed cameras are probably the part I'm most excited about. I just love the way I can like compose different shots. Kind of guide the player's attention, I guess, and also it feels kind of like setting up for a movie. I have kind of a photography background, like as a hobby, and I really just my favorite part of the game has been like setting up every single camera and doing all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, you can totally tell the use of lighting adds so much to the experience, and it has this really cinematic quality.
Thank you.
Especially when you're being chased, you make a blind turn around a corner and suddenly you're in a dead-end alley, and there's creatures coming towards you.
Yeah.
It was working so well. I wanted to ask you also about this motif of like TV screens and digital interference. The enemies that chase you are like static from a TV. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Analog media has a lot to do with it, and the game takes place in the 90s, which is kind of like where the transitionary period happened between like digital and analog. We were starting to cross over. We had VHS tapes, which were tape, but also like magnetic. And I just think that like Sam is kind of on this like fuzzy journey of dealing with the grieving process, and I think a lot of people can relate to that just because it's a universal human experience. And I feel like that medium, just like video and television of the early 90s, like kind of is a really good way to visualize, I guess, the kind of uncertain feelings that she's experiencing. Like the enemies are made of static, right, in the beginning, and they're like mimics of her, and that kind of I'm trying not to over-explain within the universe, but I'm trying to make the visuals kind of hopefully like evoke the feelings that I'm trying to express through the game, cool. I guess. Yeah.
Very cool. It's so cool. I think there was a long period where retro games meant 2D pixel art and sometimes Doom throwbacks, and that's because people that grew up with those games were making that. And now there's like our generation, like the 90s kids are growing up, and now we all want to go back to the survival horror stuff. Yep. So it's so cool to see kind of a resurgence maybe of 90s survival horror, and can you talk a little bit about just sort of wanting to be part of that legacy?
Totally. Like I feel exactly what you're saying, because like it almost feels like a cycle. It's like with the pixel art, it was that generation, and then 20 or 30 years later, it came back, and now it's again 20 or 30 years later from the first 3D generation. And my first like PS1 game was Resident Evil 1. I was way too young to be playing it, and it scared me to death. It was terrifying. But I feel nostalgia in a way for it, but I also feel like it's a useful like visual style in a lot of ways for me. Like even technically, because we're a small team, it's me and I have a few other team members now with Dread's help, and it just speeds up our development time. We don't have to make high poly assets for every single object and all of this texture mapping and like so much. All the AAA games they take so much time.
Yeah.
We keep our overhead really low, and stylistically, I think that it's scarier when not everything is explicitly shown to you. I think like obviously like games like like PT is really scary. I think they did a great job with that, but like what came out of that I feel is like you have to like show everything that's going to scare the player, and with that generation, this older generation of games, it left so much up to the imagination. Like you had to fill in the gaps. Like the zombies in Resident Evil didn't really look scary. Like the pre-rendered one did, but once you're in the game, it's like a guy and his head is a cube. But like it's not but it's still like it terrified me when I was younger, and I want to kind of embrace that and just like let people use their imagination. And
yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, the obscurity forces you to sort of fill in the gaps with your worst nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think like sound is also playing a really big role in creating that atmosphere and creating the terror, and that felt like a really big element of this. Can you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, so I also like, I'm kind of like a generalist when it comes to just my hobbies.
Yeah.
So I did all the music and the sound design, and I like instrumental music a lot, and I even just like listening to the soundtracks to all those old games. Like I love the Silent Hill soundtrack, 1 and 2, and even like the Resident Evil soundtracks, like all that like really old school, like symphonic and like the piano stuff. I think like just it all adds to the atmosphere, and it's nice that like I can we can use a lot of the modern tools like directional sound and all of that to kind of help just like immerse the player in the world. So I'm paying a lot of attention to all of that. That's something I really want to push with everything I'm doing for the game.
Yeah.
So
the attention to detail totally comes through. You can feel it even in this really short demo. So
awesome.
The game's looking great. For people that aren't here at PAX, how can they check out Heartworm?
So we have a new demo, kind of an extended version of this PAX demo coming to Next Fest in October.
Cool.
There is a demo online right now on Steam. It's a little older though, so I would wait if whoever was listening to this. And then we're on Steam, wishlisted there if you want. And then Q1 January is when like probably we're gonna start looking at a release window. But Q1 next year at some point is when the game's gonna come out. So
Awesome. Game looks great. Thanks, Vincent.
Thank you so
Check
much.
out Heartworm. Stay tuned for more from PAX.